What's metaphysics? If this is metaphysics.
Pure language,
Contemplation.
rooted in the profound.
Right. Well, 7 sentences is all this cookie is. Right. Nothing out of place, even though I left one word out, perfection. Thank goodness there was a colleague who'd remind me.
I was following your dependency and hierarchy.
Well,
So we have-
I was holding it, but I held it for too long. So that's what I wanted to do.
I have a question.
Now we throw it open for those things.
There were 3 ways that Lucia could take place. One of which was through intelligence.
Being,
What were the other two? Oh.
being, vitality, and intelligence.
So this is the principal term, or
Sir?
principal terms, right?
I didn't hear you.
The principal terms of Platonic metaphysics are the good and the one, correct?
Yes. And these
These
are
are-
the subsidiary terms
Mm.
that are used to bring them together. Yeah.
But there's a whole bunch of affirmative statements, so this is different than the negative side of speaking about the one or the good, right? Like the first hypothesis of Plato's Parmenides says the one is a whole bunch of, not a whole bunch of things, instead of the one functioning in these ways. Instead of saying a whole bunch of things that the one does, the first hypothesis speaks about the one, about what the one is not.
That's true. Well, I'll do it again. That's true. Was that good? Was that good? But he didn't make the point he may still have, and therefore, yes, Miss? If you raise both hands, you're called on.
I want to go from metaphysics to physics and look at a black hole. It's definitely a one. It brings about a huge amount of oneness from a lack of oneness. And I want to propose that rather than being good, it is anti-good, or whatever you want to say, in as much as it gets rid of information, and information is intelligence, vitality. What was the last part of Lucia? Being. And a black hole, by getting rid of information, produces anti-Lucia. And yet it is the nearest thing we can get to a oneness or one bring in physical entity.
No. Okay. Let us just, does it have all of these qualities? Perfection, completion?
In as much as it's pretty well unchanging to say it has perfection.
No. Things that don't undergo change don't have to be perfect.
It's perfect.
Just because something doesn't go through change doesn't mean it's perfect. My Uncle Louis was one of those people.
Okay, well,
He never went through
how
any
do you
change in
talk
his
about-
entire life, and he wasn't perfect.
How do you talk about perfection or lack thereof?
Pardon me? Pardon me?
How do you talk about perfection or lack thereof with a physical object? I'd say it's pretty perfect.
Probably you might be able to talk about a certain class of things that might have that property. Are you familiar? You're probably familiar with that article that came out 2 weeks ago, and it was in the New York Times, but I imagine it hit LA Times too. The study of the new particle that splits and separates and then rejoins at a future time and place. Therefore, it seems to exhibit intelligence, even though it's separated and moves at a certain distance. If so, then it's returning to its unity. and we would like to see whether or not when it returns to its unity it gains something as a consequence of its trip. Right? And now we can talk about it in this way. Right? If it adds something to it, then that would be a degree of perfection, let us assume, rather than a loss in energy. Or
I did read that article.
oh, okay,
Someone
okay,
talked about
okay.
something I don't know about, but
Okay.
I do know a lot about black holes. And black holes seem to be the epitome of oneness.
Well, would you agree a black hole reduces all things to one to one?
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
Therefore, there are no differences in that one.
No difference.
Right? Absolutely no differences, yeah. But in this dialogue, we were trying to find things that are a many that could be brought together into a union that had a quality of oneness about them. And that isn't the case in a black hole.
Yeah.
But the fact that light is attracted necessarily to black holes, which is why space is curved, those points, suggests that man, right? Man is like a black hole, and he wants all the light to be attracted to him. Enough of my humor. Yeah. Okay. I couldn't do anything with that, by the way. I need your help for that.
You were kind of touching on a question here. If you have to turn your mind around to keep from missing the mark,
Yeah.
then is that what wholeness is? Because that's what the good brings. The good brings about wholeness of all beings. And if it's turning the mind around that keeps you from missing the mark, and that's what the good brings, then is that what wholeness is? Turning the mind around to keep from missing the mark? Is there some?
You may be right, but it looks like in this case, turning about is to bring about the wholeness. Right? If I'm missing the mark, there's something wrong with what I'm doing. So I correct that. That doesn't mean necessarily that I'm going to hit the target until I try again. Right? Needs a process, doesn't it? Got to turn the mind around and then.
See, then wholeness looks like a process too, is what it seems then. By this reasoning, that if the good brings wholeness, then that's what it's doing.
Well, let's try it. Let's try it. Okay? We don't have to do that. Let's hold the idea first, rather than reject it. Right. If he misses the target, right. The expression is amartion. Right. Miss the mark.
Which in this proposition is falling away from the good.
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
No.
Here.
To keep from missing the mark, turn your mind around. From distractions.